Sleep paralysis is a terrifying phenomenon, a moment when you wake up fully aware, but unable to move. Some see shadows lurking in the corners of their rooms, others hear whispers in their ears. But in the quiet town of Black Hollow, sleep paralysis isn't just a nightmare, it's a curse that has haunted its residents for centuries. Black Hollow was founded in the late 1600s by a group of settlers fleeing accusations of witchcraft. They sought refuge in a dense forest, far from the prying eyes of the world, but the land they claimed had its own history, one that should never have been disturbed. Old legends spoke of the silent watchers, shadow-like entities that roamed the forest long before humans arrived. They were neither spirits nor demons, but something far worse, ancient beings that fed on the fear of the living. The settlers ignored the warnings of the indigenous tribes and built their town anyway. For years, things seemed normal. But then the first reports came, people waking up in the dead of night, unable to move, feeling the weight of something unseen pressing down on their chests. The victims spoke of tall, faceless figures watching them, their hollow eyes burning with malevolent hunger. Some were left with deep scratches on their skin. Others disappeared entirely, only to be found days later with their mouths stretched wide in silent, eternal screams. By the 1800s, Black Hollow had become infamous. People suffered from sleep paralysis in numbers unheard of anywhere else. Entire families vanished overnight. The town elders knew the truth but buried it deep within the town records. Hidden away in the church's basement were journals from the original settlers, describing an old ritual meant to keep the watchers at bay. Each year, on the longest night, a chosen individual had to be taken into the woods, bound in a circle of salt, and left there until dawn. The watchers would feast on their fear, sparing the rest of the town. No one ever saw the sacrifice again, but it worked. Until it didn't. In 1963, a young doctor named Elliot Crane moved to Black Hollow, intrigued by the town's disturbing history of sleep disorders. He dismissed the stories as mass hysteria, convinced that sleep paralysis was merely a neurological phenomenon. That changed when he experienced it himself. One night, he woke to an unbearable weight on his chest. His limbs were frozen, his mouth unable to scream. At the foot of his bed stood a towering figure, its form shifting like smoke. It had no face, but Elliot felt it watching him. Then it moved closer, its breath ice cold against his skin. He broke free just as dawn's light seeped through his window. But something was wrong. His reflection in the mirror showed hand-shaped bruises on his arms, as though something had gripped him tightly. That morning, he found his neighbor, Mr. Wilkins, dead in his bed, eyes wide with terror, mouth open in a frozen scream. Elliot became obsessed with the town's history, searching the archives until he found the records of the ritual. The sacrifices had stopped in 1947, after the town council decided it was barbaric. That was when the nightmares worsened, when more people started vanishing. Determined to uncover the truth, Elliot sought out the last living elder, Agnes Whitmore, a frail woman in her 90s. She refused to speak at first, but after much pleading, she finally whispered the chilling words. "They've been waiting, Doctor." The watchers never left. The sacrifices stopped, but their hunger never did. And now they're taking what they're owed. That night, Elliot set up cameras in his bedroom. He forced himself to stay awake, but exhaustion took him. The footage he captured was beyond comprehension. At precisely 3:07 a.m., his body lifted off the bed, as if invisible hands were dragging him upward. His mouth opened in a silent scream as dark figures surrounded him. The video ended abruptly. The next morning, his bed was empty. The only sign that he had ever been there was the deep, burned outline of a human figure on his mattress, as if his body had been incinerated from within. After Elliot's disappearance, Black Hollow descended into madness. More people reported waking up to find shadowy figures standing over them. Some awoke with scratches and bruises. Others never woke up at all. The town council, desperate and terrified, tried to reinstate the old ritual, but it was too late. The Watchers were no longer satisfied with one sacrifice. They wanted them all. By 1980, Black Hollow was abandoned, its streets empty, its houses left to decay. The few survivors who escaped refused to speak of what they saw, only warning others never to stay overnight. To this day, travelers who pass through report strange occurrences, unseen hands brushing against them, whispers in the wind, and the overwhelming sense of being watched. So if you ever find yourself near the ruins of Black Hollow, whatever you do, don't fall asleep. Because if you do, the Watchers will be waiting just beyond the edge of your vision, ready to claim you for their own. And once they have you, they never let go.